Hey everybody, I wanted to do a quick video here to go over the final project and to maybe clarify some expectations. This is your big project and you may be having some questions about it. So let's go through that together. I'm just going to sort of read through the instructions here. This is for the Organizational Diagnosis Applied Project Part 2. Which, by the way, this is going to be worth 150 points, not 100 points, as it says in the instructions. We're not going to be doing the Part 3 presentation part. I think that was a holdover assignment from an in-class assignment. We're not going to do any presentation. Don't worry about that part. This part right here will be worth 150 points, okay? So let's read through it quickly here. Part 2 should include a 6-box organizational model analysis. Now you guys should be familiar with this by now. You use the 6-box model to help you do your initial Part 1 of this project. And so this really is going to be similar to what you did, but you're going to expand upon it and you're going to capture more data, more reflections, and even recommendations. Okay, so reading along. Each student will submit a written paper documenting their analysis of the selected organization from each of the 6 boxes by first describing the causes using data and example of what can be done. By causes using data examples and what can be done using relevant concepts and theories to enhance organizational performance. Each of the 6 boxes must include 2 theories, concepts, or practices from the textbook. Okay, so if I were mapping this out, if I were you, since the paper should come in at about 12, 14 pages, you might want to have a page for an introduction, some background overview of the organization. You can borrow from your original paper, but don't cut and paste from it. Just sort of summarize, give some high points. Okay, I don't want you to recycle anything, but you can kind of cover the same territory, maybe rephrase things, refresh things so it is original, okay? And so what you're going to do, you're going to analyze and evaluate the outcomes, processes, and policies of the 6 boxes. Care should be taken to explain what went well and represented best practices and vote attention to areas needing improvement and lessons learned. An advanced paper, okay, for those of you that want to do really well here, will present strategies for improvement and enhancement of success. Assure these strategies are supported with critical analytical reasoning. Okay, so and as usual, this should be APA and should be 12, 14 pages, all right? So you got 6 boxes, you know, so maybe 2 pages per box. That's 12 pages plus an introduction plus a bibliography should get you in the ballpark there. Now, the question is, do you need to collect any outside data? Some of you are probably in a position where you can do that, and I would recommend it. And I kind of mentioned this earlier on in the class when I believe I did a video like this introducing the first part of the project, and said at that point you didn't have to collect any data. If you have access and you can collect data, and by that I mean talking to other people, perhaps having other people take the ODQ. And again, you can use the ODQ as your basis for the analysis here. But what's going to be different now is you're going to include other people's thoughts on questions related to the ODQ and try to get a more comprehensive picture of what's going on. So you're going to collect your data and then you're going to report on it. You're going to use each of the 6 sections there of the 6-box model, right? Each of those is a major area for your paper that you're going to write on and reflect. All right, make sure you discuss at least 2 organizational theories in each of those sections. Now, our textbook is rife with organizational theories, and you should be familiar with them by now. You may have to double back and say, okay, I'm talking about rewards in my paper here. It's one of the boxes. Where do we talk about rewards in the textbook? What are a couple of theories that I can use to talk about rewards? Okay, so you're probably going to go to like motivation and motivation at work. Try to stay away from the more theoretical theories, right? So you could talk about Maslow, but Maslow's more of a foundational concept, really. It's a jumping off point for things like Herzberg and some of these other things, right? So use the more applied theories, the more practical theories I know it sounds like an oxymoron, right? Practical theory. But use some of the more practical ideas to help you explain, predict, and give your evaluations and your recommendations. So your recommendations really should be based upon things like best practices. So going with rewards for a second, say you do an analysis and you and all your colleagues that you talk to for your assessment here all say, boy, our reward system here is really bad. We don't recognize people, we don't pay them, we don't compensate them, there's no bonuses, there's nothing here that really incentivizes hard work. Well, then what you do is you go back to the literature, like the theory that talks about the positive outcomes for having a reward system, and say, it's my professional opinion, you know, that we should begin having a reward system for merit, for improving their work and such. Okay, so that's how you take an idea, rewards, you collect some data, you show that the people all say reward structures really poor in this organization, then you make a recommendation. Here's what we should do. We should improve it. And using your own context, you know this organization better than anybody. Well, a lot better than me and your classmates, right? And so you have insight into the organization and some ideas of what you can do to initiate something like that. Okay, so put on your chief investigator hat here. Put on maybe your CEO hat and just dream a little bit. If you could make some changes, if you could make recommendations for changes, what would those be? So I know most of you are not in that CEO position, but you have to take the posture that I'm coming in here and I'm making recommendations to the CEO about how we could improve the organizational performance, looking at all these various areas that are referred to in that model. Okay, so nice introduction, a little background, split it up into 6 sections there. Now some of you might struggle with all 6. There might be one that you have a harder time really getting your head around or relating or collecting data on. That's okay. Okay, if it comes in at 5, I'm all right with that, right? But no less than 5. But try to go for all 6 of those boxes, each of those areas, discuss them, divide your paper up according to those things. Introduction, a couple of pages on each of those, including the data, the theory, the recommendations, okay? And then have a concluding section there where you wrap it all up. You might even want to recap your recommendations in that conclusion section, right? And I believe the instructions even call for an executive summary. Now, this might be your abstract. If you want to do a separate abstract up front there, sort of summarizing everything, what your paper's about, what your main conclusions are, what your main recommendations are. That's typically, abstract is more of an academic version of executive summary. If you want to do like maybe a longer 1-page executive summary, and some of you may actually want to present this to the management. I've talked to some of you may want to present this to the management of your organization because you're so excited about what you're finding and you think what you're finding here is important and could actually help. You might want to write it up as an executive summary. And you can put that on the front page of your report and say, hey, boss, I want you to read this. I did some great work. A lot of managers pay consultants thousands of dollars to get this kind of information. And if they're open, you can present it to them. Now, I also want to caution you, kind of tread lightly here. They didn't hire you, contract you to come in and do it. They may not be interested in finding it, even though it's the truth, even though it's based on theory and whatnot. Sometimes managers are, curious, creators, right? And so they could be, skeptical. They could blame you. They could become defensive, right? They could rationalize why the organization has these problems and how we can't fix it. That's okay. You have to figure out the strategy if you're going to present it to them or whether or not you're going to present it to them or not. Okay, so you're big boys and girls, I'll let you do that. But I would say you're doing some good work in this program and for this class in particular, and you're walking away with thinking, man, we really need to do some of these things. I've found out some interesting things. I've learned a lot in this class, and I hope the management takes this to heart. Okay, so that is basically the project in a nutshell. You may still have some questions. Feel free to send me an email or a phone call. I can schedule a call with you here in the next week or so before it's due. All right, so that's it for now. Blessings, you guys, and I'll talk to you later.